U.S. Air Force has secretly designed, built and flown at least one prototype of its enigmatic next-generation fighter jet, the service's top acquisition official confirmed to Defense News. The development is certain to shock the defense community, which last saw the first flight of an experimental fighter during the battle for the Joint Strike Fighter contract 20 years ago. With the Air Force's future fighter program still in its infancy, the rollout and successful first flight of a demonstrator was not expected for years. "We've already built and flown a full-scale flight demonstrator in the real world, and we broke records in doing it," Will Roper told Defense News in an exclusive interview ahead of the Air Force Association's Air, Space and Cyber Conference. "We are ready to go and build the next-generation aircraft in a way that has never happened before. Almost every detail about the aircraft itself will remain a mystery due to the classification of the Next-Generation Air Dominance Program, the Air Force's effort for fielding a family of connected air warfare systems that could include fighters, drones and other networked platforms in space or the cyber realm." Roper declined to comment on how many prototype aircraft have been flown or which defense contractors manufactured them. He wouldn't say when or where the first flight occurred. And he refused to divulge any aspect of the aircraft's design, its mission, whether it was uncrewed or optionally crewed, whether it could fly at hypersonic speeds or if it has stealth characteristics. "The importance," Roper said, "is that just a year after the service completed an analysis of alternatives, the Air Force has proven it can use cutting-edge advanced manufacturing techniques to build and test a virtual version of its next fighter, and then move to constructing a full-scale prototype and flying it with mission systems on board. This is not just something that you can apply to things that are simple systems, like Boeing's T-7 Red Hawk trainer jet, the first Air Force aircraft to be built using the holy trinity of digital engineering, agile software development and open architecture," Roper said. "We're going after the most complicated systems that have ever been built, and checked all the boxes with this digital technology. In fact, not just checked the boxes, we've demonstrated something that's truly magical. Now, the Next Generation Air Dominance Program, or NGAD, sits at a decision point." Roper declined to say how quickly the Air Force could move its next-gen fighter into production, except to say, "pretty fast." But before the service decides to begin producing a new generation of fighters, it must determine how many aircraft it will commit to buy and when it wants to start purchasing them, all choices that could influence the fiscal 2022 budget. The program itself has the potential to radically shake up the defense industry. Should the Air Force move to buy NGAD in the near term, it will be adding a challenger to the F-35 and F-15EX programs, potentially putting those programs at risk. And because the advanced manufacturing techniques that are critical for building NGAD were pioneered by the commercial sector, the program could open the door for new prime contractors for the aircraft to emerge, and perhaps give SpaceX founder Elon Musk a shot at designing an F-35 competitor. "I have to imagine there will be a lot of engineers, maybe famous ones with well-known household names with billions of dollars to invest, that will decide starting the world's greatest aircraft company to build the world's greatest aircraft with the Air Force is exactly the kind of inspiring thing they want to do as a hobby or even a main gig," Roper said. The disclosure of a flying full-scale fighter prototype could be just what the Air Force needs to garner more financial support from Congress during a critical time where the service is facing budget constraints and needs to gain momentum, said Mackenzie Eaglin, a defense budget analyst with the American Enterprise Institute. "If you can quickly get to something and show progress through product, it just changes the whole dynamic for the Hill," she said. "Got so many headwinds, it seems this would be a likely avenue to show conceptual success for his ideas." A radical new acquisition flying a prototype of its future fighter was the easy part. Now the Air Force must choose whether to commit to a radical method of buying it. Over the last 50 years, the U.S. industrial base has dwindled from 10 manufacturers capable of building an advanced fighter to only 3 defense companies: Lockheed Martin, Boeing and Northrop Grumman. The time it takes the Air Force to move a new fighter from research and development to full-rate production has stretched from a matter of years to multiple decades. The result is that every fighter program becomes existential for companies, who fight to prove that they can meet technical requirements during the development and production phase at a lower cost than their competitors. The companies are finally able to turn a profit during the later years of a program, when they become locked in as sustainment providers with the technical knowledge necessary for upgrading, repairing and extending the life of their product, often with little congressional interest or scrutiny. The sustainment account is a black hole that nobody understands. The operation and maintenance account is a black hole that no one can figure out, Eaglin said. The person who can change sustainment can change the acquisition game, writ large. For the Air Force, the turning point is when an aircraft hits 15 years old. At that age, maintenance costs compound rapidly, growing another 3 to 7% every year, Roper wrote in a F-15 document titled, Take the Red Pill, the New Digital Acquisition Reality. But what if instead of spending significant funds on sustaining old jets, the Air Force used that money to buy new ones? Instead of buying a large quantity of a single fighter over decades and retaining each plane for 30 years or more, as is currently the norm, the Digital Century Series model, proposed by Roper, posits that advanced manufacturing and software development techniques make it possible for the Air Force to rapidly develop and buy aircraft more frequently, much as the service did during the 1950s when it bought 6 fighters from 6 companies just years apart from each other during the original Century series. In August, Air Force's Advanced Aircraft Program Office completed a business case analysis of the Digital Century series model meant to validate whether the idea was technically feasible and, more importantly, whether it could save money. Leaders found that by applying digital manufacturing and development practices, as used by the T-7 program, as well as in the development of the NGAD prototype, it could drop the total life cycle cost of a next-gen fighter by 10% over 30 years compared to legacy fighters like the F-35 and F-15, Roper wrote. But for the same price as a single variant of a digitally manufactured fighter produced with a 30-year life cycle, the Air Force could buy a new fighter every 8 years and replace them after 16 years. Before the plane reaches the 3,500 flight-hour mark year, it starts needing heavy overhauls and expensive modifications to extend its service life. I don't think it's smart thinking to build one and only one aircraft that has to be dominant for all missions in all cases all the time, he said. Digital engineering allows us to build different kinds of airplanes, and if we're really smart, we ensure smart commonality across the fleet, common support equipment, common cockpit configurations, common interfaces, common architecture, even common components like a landing gear, that simplify the sustainment and maintenance in the field. The main difference is that the Air Force would flip from spending the majority of fighter program costs upfront instead of at the end of the aircraft's life. To continuously design new fighter jets, the service would keep multiple vendors constantly under contract for the development of new planes, choosing a new design about every 8 years. To make a business case that is profitable for industry, it would then buy batches of about 50 to 80 aircraft every year. The result is a 25% increase in development costs and an 18% increase in production costs. However, the price of modernizing aircraft would drop by 79% while sustainment costs are basically cut in half, Roper wrote in the paper. I can't make both ends of the life cycle go away. Industry has to make a profit somewhere, Roper said.